I'm Agent Jim Harmer with the ATF. Just kidding, with BackFire.
Hey, welcome back to Lupo Outdoors. A lot of people ask, who do YouTubers watch? Well, I have with me Jim from BackFire, and he's one of my favorite people to watch. Great content, highly recommend. You should actually know who Jim is. If you don't, there's a link to his channel down below in the descriptions. Highly recommend that you subscribe to his channel if you aren't already. So, Jim, why don't you give me a few seconds about your channel and what you do?
Yeah, so I guess we focus mostly on hunting and precision rifle, bolt action stuff most of the time. And we, review guns. We'll go do a lot of challenges kind of lately of just kind of inviting the public out to go shoot and see what they can and cannot do. And generally cause a ruckus.
I'm all about the ruckus. So there's a lot of specific firearms that Jim focuses on. He's very much into the bolt action, which is also what I like. I'm into the long-term focus on long-range shooting, and his challenges on can you stay sub-MOA at specific lengths? It's very educational and very intriguing, because when the people are trying to do the sub-MOA like at 100 yards, they're having a lot of problems with that, right?
Yeah, I think the first time we did that video, it broke everybody's brain on both sides.
Yep.
Because I think it's just the impression of a lot of people that sub-MOA is easy. Every single bolt action rifle can do it these days. And I guess the answer that we've found, because what we did is we spent 5 days and we're like, just anybody should come shoot a sub-MOA group. And we had dozens of people come. We just held literally a sign out in front of a shooting range. We're like, I'll give you $100, I think, for that video. Next video, we did $2,000. Just come shoot a sub-MOA group. And it took 5 days for us to find one person to shoot a sub-MOA group. And I think the reason it broke people's brains is because half of the people watch it, maybe 90% of the people watch it, and they're like, these guys are idiots. Why can't you do it? And we realized that just the public, it's actually a lot harder for most people to do. Now, the other percentage of people are people that really can show up to a shooting range and shoot sub-minute, no problem. It's just, they're focused on much tinier groups, and that group is saying, how is this possible that it can't be done? But
why are you missing?
Yeah, it's been interesting, especially when we put it in a hunting context, because that first time we did it was just shoot a sub-MOA group wherever you want, right? Second time, we said, you don't just have to shoot under an inch. This time we're going to draw a circle, and you have to actually put 5 shots in the circle, which is way harder. Because now we're also testing, is the rifle actually zeroed, and is it going to walk as the gun heats up, etc. And that one proved very, very difficult.
Exactly. That was a great video. I really enjoyed that. What I find interesting about watching the BackFire videos and then other YouTubers is a lot of them sit there and like, oh, Jim has this sub-MOA challenge or this ethical hunting challenge, and then they'll do like, all right, so we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to go out to 500 yards and see if you can nail that deer at 500 yards with a cold shot. But what I've noticed is not one of them has a hunting rifle. They're all precision, specific rifles.
And it's hard with that.
Yeah, and they might have 5 people and one will nail it. Yeah. And then the rest, they'll break its back or completely miss. Yeah. And I found that interesting. I'm like, well, if this is a 500-yard hunting challenge, shouldn't you be using legitimate hunting rifles? So I found that very interesting. Of course, I'm watching them.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's that cold bore shot, right? But realistic, if you're hunting, that's what you're going to have is a cold bore shot.
Now, some people argue that there's no such thing as a cold bore shot.
How?
It's actually pretty fascinating. So it's easy to say that. Okay. Let me back up a little bit. The thing that I like least in the industry is, especially a lot of companies used to, give you a target attached to the rifle when you buy it, right?
Yeah.
The higher end kind of rifles. And what I saw, dozens of times in stores, is you'd see one shot like 2 inches away, and they would write next to it cold bore, and then a nice cloverleaf 3-shot group. And I'd be like, okay, that's not even sub and what. You don't just get to ignore one of the shots. And I'm not sure that you're being honest that that was the first shot in the group. And even if that were true, the first shot is the one that I care about, and the fact that there's that delta matters a lot. Now, what a lot of people argue is that most of, or some even say all of, a cold bore shot is really a cold shooter. And that there may not actually be much difference in the rifle really kicking one out. I can see a lot of validity to that. I do think that statistically, that first shot is likely to be is more likely to be off than the distance between shot 2 and 3, for example, in a group. But we shouldn't be seeing rifles where shot 1 is an inch away from the group. That's not good. And I think most of the time what we're actually seeing is the shooter isn't quite ready for the group and isn't ready for the rifle. It shouldn't be kicking off that much.
Sometimes I wonder if they're just walking up with a round and going boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
It's like, did you really shoot this?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's questions, but that's really interesting. It's like flyers. People say there's no such thing as a flyer. You just messed up your shot. Mm-hmm. Because if you have like reloads where you have everything very, very precise, and all of a sudden you have a bullet way over here, that doesn't make sense. If you're getting good groups and all of a sudden there's one way over here, it's usually you canted the rifle or you jerked the trigger. But I talked to a lot of people and they're like, there's no such thing as a flyer. That was your mistake.
Okay, so here's my thought on it. Because I see that especially on YouTube a lot, that somebody will be reviewing a rifle, it's shooting pretty decent, and then one shot kicks out.
Yeah.
And often, all the time, they'll say, oh, now that one was me, whatever. And every time I hear that, I guess I think, what does it look like in the scope to you? Is it going that crazy? And when you're kicking it off that far, there should be such a small amount of wobble, and you should have your fundamentals in check to an extent that a flyer is, But when a flyer is that, I always think if that really was you, there's something really wrong.
Right.
Because you should not be seeing the reticle wobbling like that while you're shooting.
Try not to sneeze while you're shooting, right?
Right. Yeah. So I wonder often if what people are seeing there is they're actually being too hard on themselves. There's a natural dispersion to a group and where these bullets are going to end up. And that's going to happen every once in a while. It doesn't necessarily mean that you screwed something up. Maybe you did. Yeah. But I think often, people are being too hard on themselves. And it's you shoot enough rounds and eventually it's
gonna move, but it shouldn't be that drastic.
Right.
Especially if you're if you have high-end equipment and your reloads are grain to grain, pretty much perfect, you shouldn't have that much deviation in that rifle, especially if it's a really high-end barrel and a high-end rifle. Mm-hmm. It's I just actually last Thursday I just got a Barrett 50 cal single shot with a Night Force scope, and I'm looking forward to going out and shooting it. But it's got a match grade barrel, so I'm expecting good groups with that and good usage of that, and that's for our show for next year where we're doing a quest at 2 miles.
Are you homeless now? Do you have to sell the home for that?
No, it just cost me gold. I traded gold for it. I got 850 rounds of 50 BMG, 300 of which is ELD match.
Trade the gold, just don't give up the Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's exactly right? So it's interesting because I have 338 Lupo and Magnums. Now what I've discovered is some of my rifles are spot on, with accuracy, and then I have some rifles where it's a crapshoot whether I'm going to hit the target or not.
Yeah.
And even if I use a nice bench rest, and I got it steady, and I got my cant perfect, and then I'm like, where's this sending the bullets? You know, sometimes you get really crappy barrels, and then on some of these, I've swapped out the barrel, and now it's like a match grade rifle.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people don't understand. I love cheap rifles. I really love cheap rifles, but sometimes they don't hold up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's always fun.
Yeah, and you know, when you're making a rifle that costs $600, you have to cheap out on all three pieces. You got to cheap out on stock, you got to cheap out on action, you got to cheap out on barrel, and I guess the trigger too. Like, you just have to get to that kind of price point. Then you move up to $700 to $1,000, and we probably get to upgrade one of the pieces. We can either go to a nicer stainless barrel, or we can have a little bit better feeding of an action, or a little bit better trigger, but that's really all you can do, realistically. Then you go to $1,200, and you see a few companies that are just freaking good at manufacturing that can get us there. An example of that, I would say, is Sako. That, like, a $1,200 Sako feels like a very complete rifle, right? You're going to get the accuracy, it's going to feed, the trigger's decent, the stock's decent. Somehow they do it. But the smaller companies cannot compete in that space.
No.
Because you have to have massive quantity and economies of scale in order to do that. And so you see some companies trying to play in that space, but they're sending out just hot garbage in that space. And so I feel really bad when sometimes I'll see somebody spend $1,200, $1,500, $1,800 on a rifle that I know is absolute trash. You would be much better off with the Ruger American, the CBA Cascade at $550. That's a big company, economies of scale, that can do a decent job at that price point. But you've got to be careful. In that $1,000 to $2,000 price point, there is a lot of trash in there that is expensive. Once you go over $2,000, even the smaller companies, they're going to pay for a nice barrel. They can upgrade pretty much everything and start producing really nice rifles. But that danger zone is $1,000 to $2,000. You can waste a lot of money in there.
Well, so ironically, the Ruger American Gen 2 has quickly become one of my favorite rifles.
Yeah.
I have two of them. I have one in 223 and I have one in 350 Legend. And I love them. They're great rifles. Are they the most accurate rifles I own? Absolutely not. Are they fun to shoot? Absolutely. I mean, 223, I can shoot that all day long and just have the greatest time. But like my 350 Legend, that's just a fun rifle to shoot. And the fact that it's burnt bronze, twisted barrel, I always take the muzzle brakes off because I don't want to have one that just hides the flash. I want one that's going to keep the barrel steady. You know, I want that Ultradyne makes amazing muzzle brakes.
Yeah, they do.
And I use the long range and their max on almost most of my rifles. Yeah. Because I bet they're very consistent they're easy to install and uninstall. And for recoil and muzzle rise, they're spectacular. Have you shot or have you played with a Benelli Lupo?
I have played with them. I don't own one.
Really?
Yeah. The whole family of companies does amazing stuff. Really like it. The Lupo, every time I talk to retailers, they say that is the gun that sits on the shelf the longest before they move.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
And people, so...
It doesn't have the look, I feel like.
You're right.
They do have a wood version of it.
It's beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And then they came out with the HMR, right, which is their hunting / long range. So it has ways to quickly convert it to a long range rifle. So it has your bag rest adapter in there and so forth. And then you can make it into a hunting rifle. And this year they've added a really nice muzzle brake on it, and they did some modifications to it. Yeah. So I own the Benelli Lupo and 300 Win Mag. And then when I put an Ultradyne muzzle brake on it, I'm not getting my muzzle rise like I was before. And it is an amazingly accurate rifle. But one of the cool things about that is they took the technology from their shotgun recoil issues, and they put it into the bolt action rifle. So shooting a 300 Win Mag, the recoil feels more like a 308,
Nice.
which is spectacular. But I was watching people shoot the Benelli Lupo, and they were getting like at 100 yards, MOAs like this.
Wow.
And it's really, really cool. But there was a problem. There's 6.5 Creedmoor, you can nail 1,000 yards all day long. 300 Win Mag is a 1 in 11 twist. So lighter bullets will not make the long range hunt. It's the wrong twist.
Yeah.
And I've talked to them and and for the HMR version, they're actually they talked about converting it to the proper twist.
Yeah.
But for a hunting rifle where you're not shooting over 500 yards ethically, it's a great rifle. So if you get a chance to shoot one, I recommend it.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say go with the 6.5 Creedmoor. That seems to be the honey pot for that rifle, and everybody seems to like it. A lot of the training schools use that rifle in 6.5 Creedmoor, and
Nice.
no problems hitting 1,000 yards. But I was curious because I would love to see your review on that rifle.
Well, I should get one of those wood ones. They're pretty.
Oh, it's so gorgeous. I was over at Benelli and I was like, yeah, that's about almost $3,000 for that rifle.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Ooh, never
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
I don't need it. I don't need it at all. Did I say I liked it? I didn't like it. I don't even like it.
It's definitely their higher end, more expensive, but
$3,000.
yeah.
Because they're normally like $1,500, right? For a Benelli
So a
Lupo?
Benelli Lupo, like the base model, is about $1,600.
Okay, yeah, that's why they're sitting around in shops. Yeah.
It's expensive.
Well, when you sit that
you know.
next to a Fierce Horizon, or
Right,
something, it's only a
right.
couple $100 more now.
Right, and honestly,
tough.
it looks much cooler. But the Lupo is actually a very, very accurate rifle. I was very impressed with it, and not because it has my last name. There's a slight problem with
It
that.
is cool that they named it after you, though.
Well, we had a conversations, and I let them do that.
Nice.
So yeah, it's from
What's
the kindness of
royalty
my heart.
look like? Is that why we're talking about this?
So every time I mention it, I owe them $10, but
You pay them, huh?
I'm kidding. But it's I never saw a review from you, and I was like, I should tell them to at least check it out. I'm sure they would send you one, to do a review on, but I would love to hear your opinion on it because I really respect your opinion. When you talk about rifles, you're not just saying, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. You really break it down. Like when you do a scope review, I love the fact that you throw it in a swimming pool. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
So I got my Vortex Gen 3, and I'm like, I should do that. And I looked at him like, there's no way I'm throwing this into the swimming pool, considering the cost of that. But it's one of the things I really respect about your reviews is you don't hold anything back. You tell it exactly like it is. So you've actually influenced me on what to buy and what not to buy. So what are your favorite rifles?
Well, I guess it kind of depends on the price point. I'd say on the cheap end, I guess I'd probably lean a little bit toward the CVA Cascade. Really about tied with the Ruger American. Ruger American has a little bit better fit and finish. I maybe would give a little edge on accuracy in general to the CVA or the action as well. I don't know. They're about equal on the low end. The problem has been that $800 to $1,200 range that has kind of been molding for us what we recommend in there. And I would love to just unreservedly say it's a Tikka T3X light, but they haven't threaded their barrels. But just yesterday, they announced that every Tikka now is going to have a threaded barrel. And so at that point, I can't even imagine what else you to pick. You pick a Tikka T3X light. It's really the threaded barrel that was the problem.
That's the reason why I never bought one, because I like putting muzzle brakes on, and I love putting cans on them.
Yeah.
And it costs significantly to thread the barrel if you don't have a threaded barrel. So that's great news to me because now I want to try a Tikka because you constantly rave about Tikkas. The accuracy, the cost break. like you, I want to be frugal. I want to get the most gun out of the cost.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than spending thousands of dollars and just have something that's a wall decoration.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the other one to consider there is the Bergara B14 Wilderness
Yep.
Sierra. Really nice, right at that $1,000 price point. It's a better stock than what the Tikka has, but the Tikka is probably going to have a little edge on accuracy and the action.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you're at $1,200, and you'd be crazy to not get a Sako S20. I'm kind of sick. I love the Sako S20. And then that's really our best going up to, at $2,000, the world's a zero oyster. You got so many options.
Right. Well, like you look at the Fierce. I love the Fierce. I have one. I have it in 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
And it's just such a spectacular weapon.
Yeah. Fierce, Seekins, Horizon.
Yeah.
All play in that kind of price point, and they all have really cool things they do.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming along with us and having a talk with us.
Got to shake hands just in case he's carrying a weapon.
Exactly.
Why do we shake hands?
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing, isn't it?